Hey guys, so today's video is going to be about step 1. I just wrote step 1 2 days ago, so I'm fresh off the block and ready to tell you how to succeed. Unless I did bad, in which case don't follow any of my advice. But I won't know my score for another 2 to 3 weeks, so we'll see how I did then. But for now, I'll tell you what I did, and maybe you can use some of these ideas to help improve your score during your dedicated period. So resources here, I divided them into two blocks. There's a learning resource and a question resources. If you had to pick one of these blocks, I would definitely recommend just do questions. Questions are more important than anything because they actually tell you what you're weak at. You think you know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know, if that makes any sense. Okay, so just in case you do want to focus on actually learning material, here are the resources I used. So I read through first aid once during my dedicated period. Some people read it 3 or 4 times. I used a lot of other resources, so I felt like I didn't need to review first aid 50,000 times. Once was enough for me. Plus, I was already reading it during my first 2 years. So first aid, just once for me. Pathoma, I watched all the videos once. I also watched the videos during my first 2 years once, so twice in total. Sketchy, I used Sketchy for basically all the topics. I used Sketchy Micro, Sketchy Farm, and Sketchy Path. Some people don't like Sketchy Path because they think it's too long, but for me, because I can't memorize at all, it was great. So put everything into a little tiny story for my simple brain to remember. If you're going to watch Sketchy, I recommend you watch them at least 2 to 3 times to really get them in your head. If you watch them just once, most of my friends say it's useless because you can't remember the picture well enough. So definitely watch Sketchy a couple times if you're going to use it. I watched it 2 to 3 times during my first 2 years and then once again during my dedicated. And then Boards and Beyond, I use this resource just for biochem, so I use the Boards and Beyond biochem videos. I thought they were great for biochem, so if you need a resource to review biochem topics, Boards and Beyond videos are great. I can't vouch for any of the other ones because I didn't use them. Now, for the real meat and potatoes of what I did, here are my question banks that I used. So I did UWorld once and all my incorrects the second time. USMLERX, I did all the questions once on medium and hard difficulty. And then a third resource that I did when I ran out of these two sets was First Aid Q&A. So First Aid Q&A tests all the concepts in first aid, well, a lot of them at least. And at the end of it, it gives you a 7-block full-length exam with 50 questions per block, so it's even longer than the actual step 1, and it's great for testing your endurance. On top of these question resources, I also did the MBMEs. I did almost all of them except for 19 because I was just tired at the end and I didn't want to do 19. Plus, I read some bad Reddit reviews about 19, so I was a little sketched out. My friends who did 19 said it was okay and it was roughly reflective of the other MBMEs. They did roughly the same, so I can't really vouch for 19 or not. But I did all the MBMEs. The MBMEs don't really look like the actual exam. They're a lot shorter, but they do test a lot of the relevant concepts. So they will give you an idea of what your actual score is going to be from what I've heard. UWorld is great. I did some practice sets from UWorld exactly like how the exam would go. So I did roughly 3 practice step 1 exams where I did timed blocks 40 for 7 blocks. And UWorld looks exactly like how the actual test looks, so the format and everything exactly like UWorld. So if you've done UWorld, on test day you can skip the tutorial. You don't need it. Add those 15 minutes to your break time. So the day before the test. I woke up at roughly 9 a.m., so I slept in. I also slept in the day before because I knew that that day I was going to sleep poorly. I usually sleep really bad before tests because I'm anxious and nervous, so I take the previous 2 days to sleep in and just make sure my brain is charged up from those past 2 sleeping sessions. I drank roughly 50,000 gallons of water because someone told me it would help. I slept early, so I went to bed at 9 p.m. I wish 9 a.m. I went to bed at 9 p.m. I couldn't really sleep, so I just kind of lied there in bed in existential dread. I ate a lot of healthy foods, just a bunch of carrots, celery, mostly vegetarian, a little bit of chicken for lunch. And I only cried for about 2 to 3 hours. If you cry any more than that, it's bad luck for your test, so I definitely don't recommend it. On test day, so I got to the testing center 10 minutes early. I definitely recommend it. If you booked your testing center already, you go and visit it a couple days in advance just so you know your route and how long it's going to take you to get there. I got there and basically you present a form of ID, your driver's license or your passport, and then you need a special test-taking permission sheet that you have to print out from the NBME website. Don't forget that sheet or else you can't take the exam, okay? So ID, that special sheet, you can have that sheet as an e-copy on your phone or on a tablet and present that, and that works as well. So have that piece of paper. And then I would also recommend bringing earplugs, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So you go in, you present your ID in the paper, they scan your fingerprint, they wand you down just to make sure you're not carrying any explosives and ready to blow yourself up, and then they let you in. So you're in the test-taking center, and now there's a bunch of people all around you doing God knows what. So there's a bunch of people in these testing centers, and they all do different tests. So a guy beside me was flipping through a giant textbook, and I was wondering, how is this guy allowed a textbook on step 1? Turns out he was doing some accounting exam, okay, so be ready for that. Some people in your testing center will be writing different tests. Then there are 2 sets of headphones on your cubby. So there's a yellow set of construction noise canceling headphones, and the reason why I say bring your earplugs is because my head is too big, and those headphones did not fit me. Mostly because I just studied so hard, my head grew to a giant size filled with step 1 knowledge. But if you have a big head like me, definitely bring some earplugs because those saved me from hearing the ruffling of papers from the guy sitting beside me. Okay. Then there's another set of headphones which is for audio, so that's for audio that's going to be played for you in the test. So, you know, what kind of questions could have audio? You know, I can't tell you, but you should, it's pretty obvious. Then I had allocated 10 minutes break between each block, so I finished my first block. I had 10 minutes of break time, but it turns out I only used 5, so I could have a little bit of a longer lunch. If you skip the tutorial, you can have 10 minutes break between each block. And you can go to the washroom, have a snack, eat a light lunch, drink some coffee, tea, or water. You're not really going to be eating or drinking that much because you're going to be hyped up on adrenaline. I know I barely touched my food, even though by the end of the test I wish I'd eaten a little bit more just to keep my energy levels higher. But the adrenaline definitely flows and the test passes by in a split second if you're not paying attention. Also during my breaks, I took a couple deep breaths, stretched, did a little bit of jogging back and forth in the testing center, looking like a huge weirdo. And I also reflected on my previous block. So make sure if you do the first block and you felt a little uneasy, you can reflect on how you can improve your next block. Go faster, slower, pay attention more to certain values, certain graphs, things like that. So it's a good time for a little bit of reflection like this Zen monk dude over here. All right, so if you have any questions about the STEP exam, feel free to leave a comment in the comment box below. You're going to feel tired, you're going to feel like you don't know anything, but don't worry, it's all going to be fine. You're going to run into things on the test that you're not going to know, and when you hit those, it's important that you do your best guess and move on. Mark it and move on. You don't have time to spend a ton of time on each question because the test goes by in the blink of an eye if you're not paying attention. Alright, so I'll update you guys with my score when I get it, and I hope this video has helped you, and I'll see you in the next video.